Alessandro stood amid the lavender fields that stretched to the horizon, the faint summer breeze carrying their delicate scent. In that moment, childhood memories flooded back, afternoons spent with his mother harvesting purple blossoms, her laughter echoing through the old stone cottage. Now that his aging father had passed and his mother's letters had grown silent, all he could do was plant new hopes in this land to honor the sweat and tears they had shed. His heart ached at the thought of the challenges ahead, suspicious villagers, a tight budget, and even his own doubts about turning this place into a green tourism destination. His gaze followed the winding stone path weaving through emerald tea hills, imagining busloads of strangers arriving to immerse themselves in the peaceful scenery and sample locally fermented wine. Excitement mingled with anxiety as he wondered if his vision wasn't too lofty. After all, the skyscrapers of London still loomed large in his mind. He clenched his fists, drew a deep breath, and told himself that as long as he completed the first steps, a miracle would surely follow. The next morning, Alessandro returned to the modest one-story house by the little stream, the very spot where he had drafted his startup plan by candlelight to the chorus of cicadas. As he pushed open the rusty iron gate, a neighbor child's sobs drifted over the screen wall. In that instant he realized he was not alone. This community had shared his joys and sorrows since kindergarten. His resolve blossomed like fresh spring shoots. He slipped into the small kitchen, where pots of simmering stew bubbled on the stove. The elderly neighbor greeted him with a weathered smile and eyes full of unspoken expectations. Alessandro nodded and handed her the project map, his voice trembling yet steadfast. "We will rebuild our hometown together. Let anyone who visits here feel the breath of the earth and the warmth of its people." She closed her eyes, nodded through tears as if accepting a challenge just beginning, and in his chest, the very first spark of hope flared to life. Late afternoon light turned golden as Elowen Thorne set foot on the red earth village road for the first time. She frowned at the stifling stillness, moss-clad roofs, lush rice paddies swaying in an early autumn breeze, and distant roosters crowing like a wayward melody. Her proud heart pounded with conflicting emotions. How could a debutante raised under Manhattan's glittering lights ever find herself in such a remote place? Her grandmother, an elder woman with snow-white hair, greeted her with a gentle smile that masked untold thoughts. Elowen nodded coolly, determined not to reveal her disdain as she stepped inside. Each footfall on the wooden corridor seemed to press a knot of resentment into her chest. She was used to indulgence, used to choosing a luxurious life on her own terms. How could she accept her family's arranged exile? She inhaled deeply to steady herself when her grandmother placed a warm cup of green tea in her hand, the lemongrass aroma reminding her how out of place she was here. That night, Elowen lay in the small room overlooking a white blooming rose garden. Before her lay a world utterly different, no neon lights, no raucous music, only chirping insects and the scent of wet grass after a summer rain. Homesickness engulfed her, accompanied by anger at her parents for banishing her here to reform her character, anger at herself for having no say in her own fate. She closed her eyes and pictured her hand slipping into Alessandro's, imagined the kindly faces of the homestay hosts who had called her the village's new hope. Part of her wanted to resist, another part was curious. Could this place change her, as she had always believed she could change others? Tomorrow, Elowen Thorne would face her first challenges, learning to rise at cockcrow, mastering the wood-fired stove, and, most daunting of all, meeting Alessandro Russo, the young farmer whom her grandmother believed would teach her practical living. In her mind, that encounter felt like an unspoken pact, where Elowen's pride and vanity would collide with the earnest simplicity of this country lad. She offered a half-smile, half-scorn, half-uncertainty, ready to reclaim her destiny, or at least to prove that Elowen Thorne was not easily subdued. At dawn, as the first sunlight filtered through thin clouds, Alessandro donned his once white shirt, now faded from many washes, and strolled across the courtyard of Elowen's grandmother's home to the attic where the villagers gathered. Dew clung to every leaf, and sparrows chirped in greeting. His heart beat faster than usual, not only because of the important meeting, but because of a strange flutter at the thought of the city girl about to arrive. He reminded himself to stay composed, to show sincerity to his special guest, and above all to those who had placed their trust in him. When Elowen appeared at the foot of the wooden stairs, radiant in a cream linen dress and chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, Alessandro's heart tightened. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the modest crowd of villagers. In that moment, he saw not only her rare elegance but also the icy challenge gleaming in her eyes. He smiled and extended his hand. "Welcome, Miss Elowen. I'm Alessandro Russo. It's an honor to have you here today." His voice was warm but slightly shaky, his gaze steady. Elowen lifted her chin, her thin lips parting as she replied coolly, "I'm only here temporarily. I hope this place won't disgrace my family." Her words, sharp as an autumn wind through ripening rice stalks, made Alessandro's brow crease. The villagers fell silent, the air heavy. He invited her into the old barn where he had prepared the project blueprint, but she paused at the threshold, lifting the brim of her sun hat, her eyes drifting over the fields as if verifying his vision. Inside the rustic wooden house, sunlight slanted through the mesh door, casting a golden glow on the densely annotated map. Alessandro explained the homestay layouts, lavender plots, and trail routes. Elowen sat with arms crossed and legs crossed in defiant poise. Each time he emphasized the community benefits, she curled a lip as though to say she knew commerce far grander than this. Yet her eyes never left the sketches, tracing each number he spoke. Her heart churned in conflict. She scorned this naive simplicity, yet could not deny the unusual quickening in her chest as she heard his passionate plans to build a future for this humble land. That intertwining of pride and curiosity laid the groundwork for the dramatic psychological duel soon to unfold. The early morning sunlight filtered through the eucalyptus canopy, casting warm beams across the cracked tile courtyard where rows of lavender still held their dewdrops. Elowen stepped outside with her grandmother, clutching a basket of freshly gathered eggs. She remembered the encouraging look her grandmother had given her when assigning the task, "Today you'll go help Alessandro." A surge of anger ignited within her, her pride flaring like fire. How could she, the elegant Miss Elowen Blake, be made to bend her head gathering eggs and scrubbing the floor of a dilapidated barn? Yet beneath that haughty exterior, her heart tightened at the sight of Alessandro's slender but confident frame, busy erecting stakes around the new flower beds. As Elowen drew near, he looked up and greeted her with a gentle smile. "Thank you for coming." His voice was soft, without so much as a hint of condescension. She hesitated as she handed him the basket, her heart stirring. Whether she liked it or not, his genuine warmth had reached her. Her feet sank into the damp, muddy earth, each step making her keenly aware of the living pulse of this land, so different from the soulless luxury of the city, yet brimming with fierce vitality. All that morning, Elowen worked alongside Alessandro, scooping eggs into a woven basket, her hands trembling as she handled each cracked shell, terrified that losing even one would disappoint him. His gaze kept finding hers, filled with trust and encouragement, and she found herself wordless, her pride slipping away. When water dripped through the leaky eaves, he immediately offered her a piece of tarp to shield herself. Concern creased his weathered face, yet he never lost his smile. In that instant, Elowen felt a warm current of emotion flow through her, and she wondered, had her initial prejudice blinded her to the true spirit of this place? At noon, the villagers rested beneath the old fig tree while Elowen sat quietly by the narrow path, her thoughts in turmoil. She recalled her mother's words, "You came here to grow." Now she understood that growing up wasn't just about status and achievements, but about empathy and sharing. She found herself dreaming of the future, if she could truly understand and stand beside Alessandro, rather than judging him at a glance. How might her life change? In the slanted sunlight and swaying shadows, Elowen felt like a curious bee, once content to flit from bloom to bloom, now venturing into an expansive meadow. Countless challenges awaited her, But her heart no longer felt as unshakable as before. The next morning, before dawn had fully broken, Alessandro and several workers restarted the water pump for the irrigation system. At first the pump groaned under the strain, then suddenly fell silent. The water pressure in the pipes dropped, and the lavender growers exchanged anxious glances. Frowning, Alessandro checked the valves and engine, only to discover wear and tear far beyond safe limits. Without water, the lavender beds would wither, and the grand opening scheduled for next week would be in jeopardy. That delay could cost him the villagers' trust and scuttle the contracts he had just signed with investors. A storm of self-reproach and fear whirled inside him, as he realized how reckless he had been. When Alessandro returned to report the situation, the atmosphere at the emergency meeting in the open-air shed was tense. Against the old wooden walls, disappointment showed on every face. Some sighed heavily, others shook as they gripped welding torches. Then, unexpectedly, Elowen Thorne, previously silent and aloof, stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "If the pump is broken, we can lay pipe from the old well by the stream. I'll help dig the trench. You shouldn't have to carry all this worry alone." Her voice was steady, a stark contrast to her usual cool reserve. The villagers turned to look at her, surprise mingled with curiosity. Alessandro found himself momentarily speechless, feeling warmth spread through him. For the first time, Elowen had taken his side, defending his dream before the community. All afternoon, Elowen labored alongside the welders, shovel in hand, wading through soft mud down to the wellhead. Sweat soaked her collar as she focused on each joint. From time to time she glanced at Alessandro, who carried pipe segments to her with a look of gratitude. In that moment, she realized that shared effort and companionship held more power than any theory. Her heart softened. She had shattered the barrier of her own pride and placed her trust in their common dream. With a final push, Alessandro fitted the last pipe into place, and water roared to life, drenching the mud, and illuminating his face with a triumphant grin. Elowen couldn't contain her joy. For the first time, she felt true happiness working side by side with someone she had once looked down upon. In that slanted sunlight, an uncertain future suddenly opened a path, and the bond between them grew ever stronger. Night's hush enveloped the village after the sudden downpour, broken only by the chirping of crickets and raindrops splashing on leaves. In the attic room lit by a lone oil lamp, Elowen Thorne sat at a rough-hewn wooden table, her heart pounding as she stared at her phone's screen. Her parents' faces appeared on a video call, her mother's eyes brimming with hope and worry. Elowen took a deep breath, steadying herself so her confusion wouldn't show. "I've seen the project, and I trust you, Alessandro." Her voice cracked with excitement and fear, for this decision might cost her the prestigious scholarship her family expected. On the other end, her father nodded solemnly. "We will provide Alessandro with enough capital to complete the automatic irrigation system and upgrade the visitor trail. In return, you may still follow your planned study abroad program in France." As the words ended, Elowen felt electricity run down her spine, hope for her hometown's growth on one side, and her dream of studying abroad stirring in her heart. She bit her lip, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom and Dad." A rare smile relaxed her lips. She had never before felt so fully trusted. The next day, Alessandro sat poring over investment documents when Elowen quietly appeared in the doorway of his makeshift office. The soft yellow lamp cast gentle shadows on his weathered face. She saw him hunched over a stack of contracts, his fingers tracing the numbers and signatures of potential investors. Her chest tightened. Though he did not know the truth, he was under tremendous pressure to complete every task on a tight schedule. She swallowed hard, gathering courage. "Alessandro, do you know where that investment money came from?" He looked up and offered his usual faint smile, though his gaze was distant. "All I know is that someone wants to support the project but wished to remain anonymous. They sent the contract and asked for confidentiality." He cleared his throat and studied her with curiosity and gratitude. "Do you have any idea who it might be?" Elowen froze, her emotions crashing together, pride, guilt, and love, because she was about to confess that she was the secret benefactor. That night, beneath the pale moonlight, Elowen sat on the bank of the little stream, her reflection rippling in the water. Her mind split in two, one part swelled with pride at saving Alessandro's project, the other trembled with fear that their relationship would collapse once he learned the truth. She wondered if the bond growing between them was strong enough to survive this deception. Her heart clenched at the thought of tomorrow, the moment of choice: keep her secret to protect their shared dream, or confess and risk losing everything to preserve their honesty. Tension peaked the next morning as Elowen knocked on Alessandro's door. In her hand was the paper listing her confession. But as she stepped inside and saw him absorbed in revising the project map at his desk, she halted. He looked up, gentle surprise lighting his eyes. "You're early." His simple words made her whole body tremble. In that moment, Elowen realized her feelings for him had grown beyond any scheme. She gripped the paper, lips trembling, ready to admit everything, but then his gaze met hers, unwavering in its trust. Her pulse thundered, and she knew the pivotal moment of her life had arrived. Morning light streamed through the wooden window, casting glittering streaks across the map on the table. Elowen stood at the threshold, her heart pounding as if it might leap from her chest. She felt every breath, innocent and timid as she ever had been. In her hand was the hastily scrawled note, words of apology, pleas for forgiveness, and a clumsy declaration of her own love she had not dared speak aloud. Alessandro stood still, eyes thoughtful as he met her, as though seeking a spark of hope in her. Elowen took a hesitant step forward, heart frozen in her chest. She opened her mouth, voice husky. Do you know who made the investment transfer?" Before the words finished, she saw his eyes widen and falter. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Alessandro set the map aside and gently took the paper from her hand, his lips moving as if to speak. "Was it you?" She nodded, shoulders trembling. A wave of guilt crashed over her. She had deceived him, used her privilege to buy hope for their shared dream, and now risked destroying it all. In that moment, Alessandro studied her in silence, his eyes flickering through surprise, disappointment, and then a sorrow she could not read. Her heart sank as she realized how deeply she had hurt him. She looked down at her shaking hands, tears spilling over. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd lose faith in me, and the project would fall apart." A tear traced a wet path down her cream linen blouse. He drew a slow, steady breath, striving for calm amid the storm of emotion. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he spoke softly. "You were afraid of losing me, yet you never gave me the choice." His voice was warm but heavy. Elowen closed her eyes, cherishing the warmth of his touch as memories flooded back, the morning insects singing, the lavender scent in her hair, his radiant smile at the sound of flowing water. She realized then that, though her secret had lit the way for their village's future, it had wounded him deeply. In the suspended stillness, Alessandro withdrew his hand and stepped back. Elowen opened her eyes, her heart dropping as she saw him bow his head, gaze distant. "I need time to think." His words floated like a breeze, yet resonated in her soul like a warning bell. She could only watch as he turned and walked through the doorway, leaving a vast emptiness behind him. That night, sleep eluded Elowen. She replayed every word he had spoken, each mention of time felt like a blade slicing through her hope. She wondered whether she should remain silent and wait, or fight for forgiveness. Outside her window, the moon hung suspended, its silvery light casting her reflection on the wall, as if to remind her that love's journey is not only made of warm days, but also long nights of waiting and sacrifice. Her heart constricted with resolve. No matter how long it takes, she would wait for him, because for him, she had found a reason to change. After Alessandro's single word, time, Elowen quietly withdrew, leaving him alone with his loneliness and regret. The next morning, he returned to the work site with dark circles under his eyes, bending to pick up the stray paving stones. Each stone he set down seemed heavier under the weight of memories of her smile and gaze. Yet rather than give up, he seized a trowel and brushed away the dust clinging to each brick, as if scrubbing clean his pain to start anew on a blank page. His promises to his parents, and to himself, echoed in his heart. He would not allow himself to fail over a broken love. For the whole week that followed, Alessandro lived almost beside the newly leveled ground, his hands calloused and eyes weary but resolute. Every time the excavator rumbled to life, he closed his eyes and pictured Elowen and all the dreams they had woven together. Then he told himself, "She gave me my drive, now I will devote my whole heart to this land." That belief made him forget the smell of diesel and the roar of machinery, leaving only the breath of a project taking shape, the stone path winding up the Lavender Hill, the row of charming homestays nestled among the blooms, and the tents of wandering travelers pausing there. Months slipped by, summer's heat giving way to the fullness of autumn. Alessandro stood at the village gate as a coach of tourists pulled up, honking its horn in greeting. A bittersweet smile spread across his face. Xà Bianca now wore a new identity on the tourism map, the European Green Village. Villagers buzzed around him like bees from a broken hive, proudly showing off fully booked homestays, jars of lavender jam from the garden, and batches of local wine awaiting tasting. Pride and pangs of nostalgia washed over him as he recalled Elowen working in the rain to dig the water lines, and her sitting beside him sharing his vision of nature and humanity in harmony. But she was gone. One afternoon, while reviewing the accounting books, he received an email from the University of Strasbourg. Elowen's transcript showed top marks, and the letter praised her research on sustainable rural tourism development. He paused, a quiet joy surging within. She still remembered him, still kept an eye on their lavender farm. His heart skipped at the thought that perhaps her feelings had not faded into oblivion. Yet he brushed it aside, picked up his laptop, and resumed scheduling the third tour group of the day. He would not allow himself to pine indefinitely. Their shared dream still needed tending, hour by hour. Thousands of kilometers from Xà Bianca, Elowen Thorne wandered the hallowed stone corridors of the University of Strasbourg. Fluorescent lights cast a cold glow on the hefty ecology and tourism textbooks she devoured. 3 years passed. She became an outstanding student, invited to international conferences and published a scientific paper. Yet in every accomplishment, she reserved a space in her heart for her homeland, the planting days, and for Alessandro with his clear, genuine smile. Each time she spoke before an audience, she wondered, when she returned, would he remember her as the quiet companion of his dream? On the night before graduation, Elowen sat by her dorm window, gazing at the white rose garden below, recalling the cicadas in the lavender fields long ago. She opened her laptop and drafted a long email to him, apologies, gratitude, and a gentle reminder of the European Green Village project they had started together. But just as her finger hovered over send, she deleted the entire message, unwilling to blur the line between her academic achievements and her personal feelings. Instead, she planned a trip through southeastern Europe with friends, choosing Xà Bianca as their first stop. Her heart fluttered with excitement and anxiety. She was about to confront the keeper of their shared hopes and the secrets she had long buried. One June morning, the tour bus wound along the newly laid stone road, bringing Elowen and her friends to a village gate ablaze with flowers. She froze when she saw the sign, "Welcome to Xà Bianca, the European Green Village," its LED lights twinkling beside a lavender archway. Her heart pinched with sweetness. Amid her friends' laughter, she stole glances in every direction, searching for him. As the group entered the experimental garden of native plants, Elowen accidentally bumped into someone scattering seeds. Time seemed to slow, the wide-brimmed hat, the dust-speckled white shirt, the slim but sturdy figure. She looked up and met his eyes, Alessandro Russo, his gaze a blend of surprise and something softer. Memories flooded back, him handing her the egg basket with a smile, wading through mud side by side to lay pipes, and the hurt in his eyes when she confessed. Her knees went weak, Her heart raced like it had on their first meeting. The world around them faded, leaving only the two of them in a silence filled with emotion. Elowen stammered, Are you well? He inclined his head, his voice warm as ever, You're back. Those two simple words unleashed a torrent of feelings she had long kept hidden. Under the dreamlike lavender canopy, they stood there, eyes brimming with awkwardness and hope, as if rewriting the opening chapter of their shared dream. After that initial moment, Alessandro gently invited Elowen and her friends to tour the new stone path up the lavender hill. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting sparkling patterns on the gravel. Elowen tread slowly, her eyes taking in the transformed landscape. What was once a muddy track was now a solid road, flanked by vibrant lavender in place of weeds. Pride and wistfulness filled her. Each step, each breath, bore witness to his, and her, efforts. Halfway up the hill, beneath a wooden pergola sheltering a rustic table and chairs, Alessandro stopped and looked directly at her. I wanted you to see the fruit of the days we spent together, even if it's just a small part. She nodded, her voice catching, It's beautiful. But I deceived you. Remorse flooded her eyes. He gave a sad smile. Do you think that diminishes what we built together? After a moment's silence, Elowen looked up, tears streaming. I was afraid that if you knew I was the investor, you'd lose faith. But now I understand there's nothing more precious than honesty. Alessandro placed his hand on her shoulder. Trust can be rebuilt. What matters is that you returned. Amid the sea of purple flowers, their two hearts, once out of sync, found harmony again. The friends around them fell into respectful silence, the only sound the breeze in the lavender. Elowen clasped his hand, warmth spreading through her. Though the path ahead still held challenges, this moment closed the sad chapter of their past and opened a new page for their love, one founded on trust, understanding, and patience. That evening at the homestay, a small feast was laid out on the porch under glowing lanterns, pasta tossed in olive oil, crisp straw bread, and fragrant red wine. Elowen seated Alessandro beside her, and they clinked glasses with tender smiles. She opened her heart, telling him of sleepless nights in Strasbourg, her scientific publication, and her longing for home. He listened attentively, occasionally prompting her to share more. As friends chatted animatedly, Elowen whispered, I used to think hiding the truth was strength. Now I know true strength is facing up to it and taking responsibility. Alessandro looked at her fondly, his eyes deep. I saw your strength from the very first day, when you rolled up your sleeves and joined me in the work. That same strength now has the courage to admit mistakes. She smiled through tears, squeezing his hand under the table. Later, after the meal, they sat by the window overlooking the fields, where fireflies danced. Elowen rested her head on Alessandro's shoulder, feeling an unparalleled peace. She whispered, Will you forgive me? He wrapped his arms around her. Forgiveness is only the beginning. Now let's write the rest of our dream together, shall we? She looked up, her eyes shining. Yes. Amid the chirping crickets and the rustle of lavender, two young hearts reunited, confident in the long journey ahead, where love and shared dreams would bloom together. The next morning, the wind chimes tinkled on the porch and the kitchen smoke carried the scent of freshly baked bread into the room. Elowen woke beside Alessandro as dawn light filled the window, painting a peaceful scene. She quietly sat up and watched him bent over the financial report spread across the wooden table. A warm feeling welled in her heart. He was no longer the distant young man she once admired, but her true partner, sharing the weight of their shared dream. She tiptoed so as not to wake him, yet Alessandro still looked up and greeted her with a smile. In his eyes she saw something new: trust, love, and responsibility. She returned his smile with affection, then together they stepped into the courtyard to inspect the day's progress. The morning air was so crisp it stung her fingertips, and the distant hum of excavators blended with birdsong. As they passed each worker's shelter, Alessandro introduced them as members of their small family: Fabio the carpenter with his skillful hands, Talia, who crafted the lavender jam, and Marco, the Jeep driver who ferried guests up the hill. Each name carried its own story and pride, and he wanted her to share in them all. Elowen listened, eyes wide as if trying to memorize every detail. She understood that to cultivate their future together, she had to truly immerse herself in this life. A spark of inspiration flared in her mind. She would organize a small gala for visitors, a night of wine tasting, live music, and jam-making demonstrations. When she shared the idea, Alessandro's face lit with excitement. Brilliant. We'll call it the Lavender Night Gala. They exchanged joyous smiles, a promising beginning to their next hopeful venture. The Lavender Night Gala was scheduled for the following weekend. Excitement permeated the village. Flower pickers harvested lavender sprigs, Talia's jam-making team retreated behind the kitchen, and the local musicians rehearsed by the small cafe. Elowen took charge of the program design and decorations, while Alessandro handled logistics and signed a few more contracts with wine distributors. As the event drew near, pressure mounted on both of them. They wanted to delight their guests, yet could not afford to fail in front of those who had placed their trust in them. On the eve of the gala, Elowen sat at the wooden table, the bright red calendar square marking tomorrow, her heart fluttering with anticipation and nerves. She recalled their first meeting, when pride had filled her heart, and the day she had dug trenches in the rain by his side. Now she smiled inwardly at how far they had come, from strangers to life partners and devoted collaborators. Every line of the script she penned poured out honest narratives and sincere wishes for an authentic experience. She thought of Alessandro. Under that very moon, he had promised, "We will continue writing our dream together." Now she knew that dream was coming to life day by day. As dusk fell, lanterns glowed among the lavender rows, casting an enchanted purple hue. The band began a lilting melody while guests sampled jams and wine. On the open-air stage, Alessandro took Elowen's hand and led her forward, her eyes sparkling like distant stars. He thanked the community and honored her, the woman who had conquered her fears, to stand by his side. Cheers erupted around them, but for a brief, perfect moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, their hearts beating as one. When the final song ended, Alessandro held the microphone and turned to Elowen. "You've changed me, and this land. Will you walk with me on the road ahead?" She smiled, eyes bright. "You and Xà Bianca are my new home. I will stay here forever." Beneath the rural Milky Way, they shared a sweet kiss, closing the prologue of their love story and the promise of sustainable aspirations. 5 years later, Xà Bianca stood as a shining example of eco-sustainable tourism, environmentally friendly homestays, lavender garden tours known worldwide, and the annual Lavender Night Gala drawing thousands of visitors. Alessandro and Elowen, now life partners, sat on their porch, watching the sunset dye the lavender hills purple. Hand in hand, they listened to the cicadas and the whispering wind, recalling the journey from those early, arduous days to this moment. Love, trust, and unity had transformed a barren plot into a land of dreams. In the twilight's glow, they shared a knowing smile and quietly vowed, "Together, we will write new dreams."